magic man. Why, Shrek.
Mom and light.
Likey.
Who's making this stuff?
Oh, damn.
Oh, damn indeed. Morning, afternoon, whatever, I'm Scratch. And today, I am morally outraged about the animation in a children's film. How dare you all! I think that it's no secret that some people do not like the look of the new Shrek trailer, and I have mixed feelings. So let's get shrifty with it, shall we? Back in 2001, animation technology was pretty limited. We're not quite talking tin toy limited, but we're also not quite at Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, now are we? As poorly as most CGI from the early noughts has aged, Shrek was very technically impressive for the time. Nowadays, it looks somewhat dated, but complaining about it is kind of like watching a Doug DeMero video where he complains about the fact that an obsolete car doesn't have a fucking center console iPad. Like, no shit, the K car from 1993 can't play Instagram Reels while you wait in traffic on the M25. Who would have thunk? My point is, CGI has come a long way, like, a long way, and I'm gonna get back to this later, so pay attention, this will be on the test. So back in 2001, the oddly prominent showcase that year was absolutely fur. Now, it might not seem like it, but fur is really hard to do in CGI. Keep in mind, when you render something in a 3D program, the way that each light ray bounces off of everything in the scene that you're rendering has to be individually calculated. So as you can imagine, there's a lot to hair simulations. The furrier your characters, the more time it takes to render a frame. You ever notice how video games almost always have a sort of disappointingly androgynous blob instead of actual hair? Well, there's a reason for that. On average, an animated film tends to be 90-ish minutes, running at 24 frames a second. That's 129,600 individual frames. That's no small beans. You gotta have some pretty beefy systems if you want to get shit like that done. Placing all those individual pieces of hair in a hair simulation by hand is going to get very, very old very, very quickly. I've been using Blender pretty casually since 2016, and I'm only now starting to get a hold of how the fuck hair's supposed to work. In Blender and most other 3D programs, you use something called a particle system to stick the hairs in the right position, in the right orientation, with perfectly even distribution to make it look natural. And the best part, it only takes like 5 or 6 button presses at least. Usually there's a lot more to it than that, but I mean, you know, wham. Hair. It's abundantly clear that Donkey's hair, especially, has changed. To me, this doesn't look like a particle system. Maybe tiny textured micro-tube meshes or perhaps some type of render-enabled terminated vector mat, but this is a particle system. By the third film, the animation software that DreamWorks was using at the time had changed, had improved, and the world of Shrek had lost that cheap look and has a sort of bloom to it, which is wording I absolutely did not steal from Phantom Strider. The lighting is better, the claw simulations are better, the way the atmosphere simulations work are better, and of course, the hair is better. Shocking, I know. A movie made in 2001 is fundamentally going to look different than a movie made in 2025. There's no avoiding that. I think that it's really the style change that's throwing the majority of people right off the bat, and there clearly is a style change here. DreamWorks is doing something I think they think is clever. The animation is more cartoony, the way it moves, the way it looks. It fundamentally has more cute appeal, and we're just not used to seeing Shrek films do this. My guess is that, if anything, this is a deliberate move from DreamWorks to make Shrek more commercial. I mean, what do you think is going to sell better? This or this? And, okay, you know, I understand there are hungry investors that are demanding to be fed, but I feel like this comes at an expense. Shrek, up until now, has never used cute appeal to keep your attention. It's such a culturally significant film series because of its genre-bending, edgy craziness. The original animation in Shrek, from a stylistic perspective, really leans hard into photorealism with the characters too, and when you combine that with the animation limitations of the time, like the actual rigging and polycount of the models, it comes off as very unique, which is a very polite way of saying very ugly. That's no slight to the animation teams who worked on the original films. The ugliness of Shrek, I believe, is important to the message of the first movie especially, and to an extent the rest of the franchise. The general take that I could find on the message of the first Shrek film is to love and accept others regardless of appearance. Shrek, in the universe of Shrek, is a genuinely decent person, if not somewhat curmudgeonous, but he's also canonically very ugly, and the characters who judge him for being so are ugly in another way, inside. The original book, Shrek, is very different than the movie, and the primary focus seems to be centered around self-satisfaction regardless of who you are or what you are seen as. Apparently, it's fun, cocky, and full of attitude, according to Wikipedia, because I've never read it. And like, I personally like the DreamWorks take on the wider concept of Shrek better, but that might just be me remembering the movie from my childhood and not the book. Shrek was the first film from DreamWorks SKG, a company founded by David Geffen, Steven Spielberg, and a very pissed off ex-Disney CEO, Jeffrey Katzenberg. That's why Shrek is dripping with such cheerful sprite. That's why Shrek is dripping with such cheerful spite as it pokes and prods at Disney's tired formulas and tropes. One of the more interesting ways it goes about doing that a lot of people don't mention and likely don't realize is with the use of CGI. See, at the time, Disney was just coming out of their Renaissance period, and after a large quantity of successful, very successful, and insanely successful films, it was refreshing to see a small underdog up-and-comer, like DreamWorks was at the time, take the stage and steal the first fucking Oscar for animated films out from under Disney's broomstick, all while using an entirely different style of animation. To be fair, the industry has been heading in the direction of CGI since the start of Pixar in 1993, but I believe it was Shrek that really pushed Disney over the edge. Ever since then, the House of Mouse started developing their own 3D films and styles, which admittedly took a hot minute, but hey, eventually it paid off. Literally. But that's not where the fun stops, oh no. See, as of recent, in response to the spread and rapidly increasingly frightening imperceptibility of images generated by artificial intelligence, a lot of the art world has, in response, been training itself to recognize AI in an image with, I must admit, an impressive degree of accuracy. Sometimes. It's a good thing to do in general, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who has the time and patience. It's a good skill to have on the internet, just in general, but also for, the sake of art and protecting it. The caveat to this is the fact that it installs a little voice in your mind, a little Windows 11 bloatware background process that's always on the hunt for AI. And every time I think a lot of other people look at the appearance of the trailer, that little voice in our head says, hold up, what's going on here? I mean, this is obviously not AI, it's the work of hundreds, if not thousands, of talented artists working in a historically overworked and underpaid industry. But with the stylistic shift, it comes off as, well, off. And I wonder if this is one of the reasons why even more people are turned off by the appearance of Shrek 5. Yikes, wrong time, wrong place, eh? And no, I do not want to refine this sentence with Gemini, bitch, shut the fuck up. Like, this is how I imagine it would look if some AI bro made a Shrek 2025 YouTube clickbait trailer. The issue here clearly not being the art style of the new movie, but instead AI image generation and the flaws and issues that lie therein. If some fan had made this, legitimately, where somebody had just kind of done their own style, people would really appreciate it, for the most part, I think. But this just looks like some dark alternate universe where Disney made the film.
You became the very thing you sought to destroy.
Now, DreamWorks uses their own proprietary animation software, Premo and Apollo, to make their films. Shrek predates the existence of both of these animation applications, meaning it was likely animated on Emo, which was DreamWorks' internal proprietary animation software up until How to Train Your Dragon came out in 2010. And the thing is that after these software updates, hardware updates, and entirely new animation systems, it's more than reasonable to guess that the old models from 2001 just don't work anymore. It's clear that Shrek has to be remade every time. That's just the way the cookie crumbles in CGI animation. So changing the style this time around just wasn't too much of a stretch, to be honest. One of the things that really jumped out to me when I went to see Puss in Boots and The Last Wish in the theaters was the fact that Shrek and Company had been remade for the splash screen logo thing. And I knew that a new Shrek film was coming out eventually. It had been revealed at that point, but something was throwing me about the style. This is obviously much more of a stylistic change than anyone initially thought, especially in contrast to this, but still, they could have stuck with the old style. They had the models. They just didn't, I guess. It's also entirely possible that DreamWorks is playing very cheekily into the fact that these characters have changed in appearance to propel the success of the film. It's one thing if a new Shrek film comes out, it's another if he looks different.
I don't like him putting all these chemicals in the water. It turns the frickin' ogres gay.
Do you understand that?
Everyone is seemingly fucking losing it about Shrek's daughter because, I guess, Booba. But the thing is that we don't know how old this character is yet. There's already over 3,000 results on Rule 34. You are playing with fire, people, my god. Another problem that a lot of people had was the now canon existence of social media in the Shrekiverse. And yes, I did feel my toes curl a little bit when I first saw this. This is the length that I am now going to avoid using the word cringe. The struggle is real, bros. I, like many other people, feel that every single studio trying to shoehorn internet culture and meme references into a franchise's canon was so much more funny the 15th fucking time it happened. I swear to God, if I have to endure another fucking screaming goat reference, I will go on a fucking rampage. I am not fucking playing! And I mean, yeah, pop culture references in Shrek are like peanut butter and jelly or fish and chips. But I think this feels so out of place, number one, because it's been so long, and now the style and age of the characters has changed so much, and number two, up until now, the internet wasn't enough of a thing to be part of Shrek when Shrek the Third or Forever After came out. So pop culture, yes. Internet culture, no. Even though these films were around at the time when memes, albeit primitive ones, existed. But here they are now, in all their glory. And I imagine that a lot of people feel like this is just a bet to appeal to a younger generation, and I think yes. But I think also, that's just the finessity of Shrek to laugh at what's happening right at the moment, which at the moment is TikTok, and by extension, short form content. Primarily though, Though I think that a lot of people my age feel that Shrek is such a beloved franchise from our childhoods that everyone aging up on a linear timescale and experiencing internet-like phenomena hits a little bit too close to home. Maybe that's why it's so hard to make a good sequel. Stories are immortal. They are bound by the rules of time. Things have to happen one after another, even if you don't tell them linearly, but they can always be retold. The more you know in that story's canon, however, the closer our protagonists come to the end of it all. Maybe we just don't like sequels because they remind us of our own mortality, a frighteningly cold and honest mirror, making us know again and again that nothing is forever. The more you tell, the closer to the end you come. And before you know it, well, it's all over, isn't it? I was fine with the style of the ones we hadn't seen in such a while. I was fine, 'cause I knew that they didn't really matter until you. I was fine when out you came, and we all fought like it was all some silly game. Ogre looks, if they're strange, after all those years, we didn't think you'd change. It's ogre, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it ogre? It's ogre, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it ogre? It's done, and they love you, and they hate you, and you're gone. It's ogre, isn't it? Why can't I move on? Shrek and Donkey, Gingerbread Man, Pinocchio, Fiona Dragon, with the fandom torn asunder. Can we bully them back, I wonder? Who am I now in this world without him? Petty and dull with the nerve to doubt them. What does it matter? It all looks anew, and they're gooning to Shrek's daughter too. It's ogre, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it ogre? It's ogre, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it ogre? It's done, and they changed you, and they aged you, and you're gone. It's ogre, isn't it? Why can't I move on? It's ogre, isn't it? Why can't I move on?
Wicked down.